have already joined us, so I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. We expect quite a few more, so we will begin the webinar in 2 minutes, sharply at 9:30. Thank you. Good morning again to folks who have just logged on. I know there are also some other folks that were logging on, but I do want to honor our commitment to end sharply at 10:30, so we will start now. First of all, on behalf of the Immigrant Employment Council of BC, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on connecting BC newcomers to employment. My name is Daisy Kwan, and I'm the Senior Manager, Programs and Stakeholder Relations at IEC BC. Joining me on this webinar today is my colleague, Fanan Griffin, and Christy McGee from the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. And I'd like to acknowledge the Government of Canada, through which funding for this webinar is made possible. We're very, very pleased with the response that we've received for this session today, and we trust it'll be useful and informative for you. We also know that there are several folks that were interested, but for various reasons could not join us. To ensure that this to ensure that this information is as widely accessible as possible, today's webinar will be recorded and made available online on our website, iecbc.ca. A link to the recording will be sent to everyone registered for this webinar. A housekeeping point: if you're having technical difficulties with accessing this webinar, please call GoToWebinar at 1-855-352-9003 and choose option 1 for webinar, followed by option 1 for troubleshooting. This number is also noted in the chat section of this webinar for your immediate reference. So on your screen, you will see the agenda. Our goals today are simple and twofold. One is to introduce to you the newly launched BC JobConnect, formerly known as BC Refugees JobConnect. This is, for those of you that are new to this tool, it's an online portal that essentially connects newcomers in BC to employers looking to hire. The second goal today is to answer any questions that you may have on how BC JobConnect can assist you to help your clients find meaningful employment. We will start our presentation with a brief overview of BC JobConnect and specify who is eligible to use this tool. We will then continue with a demo of BC JobConnect to show you how you or your clients can create occupational and skills profiles. And we'll also walk you through how easy it is for employers to find candidates using keyword searches. Questions will be taken at the end. However, you can type questions as they arise, and we'll do our best to answer them in today's session. If there are any questions that we have not been able to respond to during the session, we will respond to them via email to all respondents. And as I mentioned before, this webinar is scheduled to end at 10:30, and we will honor that commitment. Before we begin the formal presentation, it is my pleasure to introduce Christy McGee from the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. Christy was instrumental in helping us to identify the opportunity to present this webinar to you and in shaping and promoting it. And on behalf of IECBC, I extend our sincere thanks. I will now pass the floor to Christy, who provides some opening remarks.
Good morning. This is Christy McGee, Senior Advisor with Diversity and Client Inclusion at the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. And it is my pleasure to be here this morning to open up the BC JobConnect webinar presented by the Immigrant Employment Council of BC. Since the focus of today's webinar is on newcomers to BC, I think it's appropriate to recognize that the vast majority of us here in beautiful British Columbia are indeed the children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren of immigrants. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Now, before I hand it over to Daisy, I'd just like to say how delighted I am that we have so many partners from Work BC tuning in across the province. The expansion of the BC Refugees JobConnect to include all immigrants is a great move, especially if it means having yet another tool for supporting the significant inclusion group into employment. We know our Work BC Employment Services Centres across the province are working hard to deliver Employment Program of BC services and supports to newcomers. So I hope our colleagues listening into the webinar this morning find it informative and beneficial. Thanks, Daisy.
Thank you very much, Christy. So now I'm going to begin with a brief overview of BC JobConnect. And again, I acknowledge that for some of you, some of this information may be a bit of a refresher, particularly if you had attended the November 16th webinar and or you have utilized the tool with your clients. So I want to inform you that as of August 21st, this tool, rebranded as BC JobConnect, is now available to all newcomers who meet the eligibility criteria. So essentially we now have three streams. You may recall that previously this was targeting individuals who had arrived as refugees in Canada. It's now available to individuals who landed as immigrants and also is available to people who have been approved for immigration to Canada and expect to reside in British Columbia. An example of this are clients of IECBC's FAST program. The FAST program provides pre-arrival services for individuals working in skilled trades, IT, and biotech. And later when Fernand walks you through the demo, you'll see how some of the questions specific to individuals that are not currently in Canada provide information for employers who may be interested in someone who's currently overseas and are willing to wait for them to arrive in BC before speaking to them about employment opportunities. So in terms of the benefits of BC JobConnect, it's easy to use both from the candidate side and from the employer side. Most importantly, it provides a space to create an online profile for candidates where they're able to showcase their skills and experience. And there are different fields based on the immigration status of the individual that also allow the individual to showcase specific features. It also allows for employers who are looking to hire to directly request connections to candidates that are interested. And they find these candidates, as I mentioned before, through keyword searches and through reviews of profiles. And just to reiterate, again, registered employers are looking to hire now because they have positions that are currently available. So at this point, I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague, Fernand, who will give you a snapshot of results to date, speak to you about eligibility criteria, and then walk you through the BC JobConnect portal.
Thank you, Daisy, and thank you, Christy, for joining us today. So I'll just give you a quick snapshot of the results since April 1st, 2017. As you can see on the screen in front of you, we launched the tool in February 2017. So we've registered 160 employers in total. 74 of them, that's almost half, have been registered since April the 1st. 69 candidates have been registered since April the 1st. That's 312 in total. That was as of yesterday morning, but that number has actually increased to 332. And since April the 1st, we've had 129 connection requests from employers. Of those 129 connection requests, 47 have been successful. That's a 37% connection success. What we consider a successful connection is when we've reached out to a client within BC Refugees JobConnect and we tell them about the job position available and they give a positive response in regards to that position, then we pass those details back to the employer. Of those 47 successful connections, 17 candidates have been employed. So that's a 35% interview to employment offer success ratio. That's about 2% higher than the industry standard of 33%. So before I show you how a candidate actually registers for a profile for BC JobConnect, I'll quickly cover the eligibility criteria necessary for registration. So this service is free of use for all candidates who are 1. Currently residing or planning to reside in British Columbia, 2. Have lived in Canada for less than 5 years, 3. Have received their permanent residence number, 4. Are currently seeking employment, and 5. Have the necessary supports in place to work. If a candidate satisfies the above criteria, we would ask them to visit www.bcjobconnect.ca and register as a candidate. So without further ado, I'll walk you through the new expanded website, highlighting some of the changes that have taken place as we go. First thing you might notice is the new logo and domain name. To remove confusion, we've changed the name of the website to www.bcjobconnect.ca. For those of you who may have registered clients with the older website, www.bcrefugeesjobconnect.ca, their information and login details have been migrated to this new website, so they will not have to re-register an account. However, I would suggest they re-log in to their profile to ensure that their information is all correct and up to date. Since we launched the website, IECBC has responded to community feedback and has implemented updates to the website, some of which may require a candidate's attention if they haven't done so already. So if we go to the Register as a Candidate page, the first thing a candidate is asked to do is enter their username. This username is what they'll use to access the website and can be a combination of letters and numbers. Following that, we've asked them to enter their email address. This is needed for a confirmation email which the clients receive once registered, and is also the point of contact for any follow-up information that they may wish to receive from IECBC. For our own reporting, we've requested that they let us know how they found out about the service and have provided them a drop-down box with a range of options. If you want to take some time after the webinar to go through this drop-down box to see if your service provider is listed, and if not, please send me an email and I'll gladly add it to the list. Once they've entered in their confidential password and agreed to the standard terms and conditions, the candidate is ready to go and can begin building their profile. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use a test profile which I created previously, and this should help convey a complete profile. So as we progress through the profile, you'll see these red stars indicating mandatory fields. Once the profile's mandatory fields have been populated, it will be approved within the system and viewable by employers. Candidates are asked to identify their immigration status. The option they select in this drop-down box will change the fields they are asked to provide information for throughout the registration process. This status can be changed post-registration and is not permanent. So a client who identifies as a pre-arrival client can update their status to a landed immigrant once they've transitioned to Canada, and should a client who wish to then specify that they are now a landed immigrant in Canada, they are now free to do so. Under the personal information section, you can see the information we're looking for is fairly high level, and much of it reflects the information that an employer would need or would expect to see on a resume. We provided drop-down boxes wherever possible and have included questions such as a driver's license, as some candidates may neglect to include this information on a resume, but as we know, it can be very important for an employer. Next, we move to the contact details section. In the area labeled website, we provided several optional fields here for the candidate. We recognize that we are dealing with many different careers here, so I've tried to cater for every opportunity for a candidate to build a complete profile. For many jobs, it may be necessary to provide examples of your work. This could be through an online blog or an example of a body of work that you've completed, such as an online portfolio or a website. And so, we've added this section for a candidate to link to their own Vimeo, YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn account. Those of you familiar with the website will notice a new section here asking clients if they would like to be contacted regarding updates and job positions through our JobConnect WhatsApp group. One of the difficulties we've experienced so far with the project has been getting in contact with clients regarding job positions available. We've spoken with settlement workers in the industry who have advised us that WhatsApp groups tend to be a helpful way of getting in contact with candidates. We've also asked candidates to state whether they are willing to relocate to another city for employment. This is information that may be pertinent to those employers that are located in regions outside of Vancouver or the Lower Mainland. At the bottom of the page, you'll see that we are requesting some immigration information. As you can see, none of this section is viewable to employers and is for client verification and reporting only. The informational boxes are particularly helpful here for clients who immigrated as a refugee but may not have been aware of their official refugee stream. One of the most important parts of the verification steps for clients is to enter their permanent residence number. More information on where this number can be found is within the informational box. This number is used to help us verify the validity of a client within the program. Once this information has been input, the candidate can save their profile page and move on to the next section, which is education and experience. The system is intuitive in that if a client attempts to save their profile without filling in all mandatory fields, it will flag this to them and take them to the section that they've left blank. Once the candidate has filled in this information correctly, they will automatically be taken to the page where we are asked them to provide their education and experience information. Candidates have the option of entering work experience into either the work experience or self-employment tab. We noticed that when some of our refugee stream candidates were entering in their work experience information, they were becoming confused as to their company name if they had only had self-employment in their home country. They may not have had a company name as such, so the addition of this self-employment tab has made things a little easier for them. So if we click into Add Work Experience entry section, you'll see that the information requested here is quite straightforward. We've asked for the job title, company name, dates employed, job location, and for a minimum of 2 duties. We feel that even the most basic of work experience entry will have had at least a minimum of 2 duties. As I said, it's a fairly straightforward information entry system here, and again, we've got the helpful informational boxes in there should further context be required. Next, we're asking clients to enter their educational experience. When we enter the Add Education tab, again, you'll see it's quite similar to the work experience section in how it's laid out. We've supplied them with drop-down boxes for their level of education attained, asked for the area of study and the name of their place of education, and again, we wanted to cater for all candidates here, so I've given them the ability to state whether their education has been completed, is in progress, or is incomplete. You may have noticed that both the work experience and education and experience entry sections are not mandatory for refugee status candidates. We've done our best to cater for refugee candidates of all backgrounds here by making this section optional to fill. However, for candidates who have selected skilled immigrant or pre-arrival status, they will be expected to fill in these sections. Under the education section is where candidates can enter in any extracurricular activities they may be pursuing with regards to their careers. We've given them the option to enter in their professional certifications, their membership in a professional or trade organisation, their volunteer experience, and any courses or training that they may have completed since arriving in Canada. Next, we move to the job interest information area. This is one section where those of you who are familiar with the site will see a significant change. Once a candidate identifies that they are actively seeking employment, they are asked to specify the type of work that they are seeking: full-time, part-time, day, afternoon, night, etc. We then provide the candidate with a drop-down box for them to specify their industry experience, where they can select from the different industries as specified by the North American Industry Classification System. We've also provided 2 tiers of the National Occupation Classification List for candidates to select from. Candidates can make up to 3 selections here. This information is important as what they select here, combined with the information they enter into their work and education entries, is what will help populate their profile into an employer search. I'll explain how an employer search works in greater detail shortly. The language ability section is an area that we feel helps the tool really stand out to employers. It's extremely user-friendly and intuitive, and is a feature exclusive to BC JobConnect. If a candidate has not taken any language assessment test, they click no, and instead they are asked what languages they do speak instead. Here we have given them a drop-down list of languages to enter, and if their language still isn't appearing here, they can always manually enter it. However, if the candidate has taken a language assessment test, they then have a few different options. They must first select the language assessment test and then select their level. You can see here that we have given them the ability to choose from CLB, Link, IELTS, CELPIP, and TEFL. Depending on the assessment the candidate selects, these scales and their descriptions will change. This information is viewable to employers and is one of the first things that an employer will see in a candidate's profile. The reason being that we recognize that the language ability of immigrants is usually a concern of employers, so we feel it's an issue that's important to address from the beginning. At the bottom of this page, candidates can upload any resume, cover letter, references, or certificates that they may have. Giving candidates this option provides them the ability to really show off their skills and abilities. Please note here that should a candidate decide to upload a document containing personal information, such as a phone number, an approved employer will have immediate access to this, so we would advise candidates to review whatever information they wish to upload into this section to ensure that they are happy with it displaying in the public domain. Once all this information has been entered, a candidate's work is complete. Once IEC BC has confirmed their details and eligibility for BC JobConnect, their profile will become live and viewable to employers. Now, I'll briefly walk you through the differences between the profiles of each immigration status. If we scroll to the top of the page and change our immigration status selection to landed immigrant in Canada and select update status, you can see that many of the fields remain the same. If we scroll to the very bottom of the page, you see that some of the immigration information that we're asking for has changed, but it is still kept confidential and is strictly for reporting and verification purposes only. If we enter into the education and experience section, you can see that the work experience and education entry sections have now become mandatory. If we scroll down the page slightly, we've also asked candidates whether or not they have completed IEC BC's FAST program, and if so, they can upload a copy of their certificate. Earlier, you heard my colleague Daisy discussing IEC BC's FAST program. This program is open to our pre-arrival clients who have yet to land in Canada and is an excellent program for those looking to get a head start in their career in Canada. If we scroll to the top of the page again, and this time select Approved for Immigration in Canada but yet to land, and click Update Status, and return to our profile page, you can see that some fields have appeared and some have disappeared. We're no longer seeking a candidate's driver's license or their specific address, given that this information is no longer as relevant to an employer. Rather, we are just seeking their country of residence and the city in which they intend to live in within BC and when they intend to land in Canada. This helps to give employers a thorough picture of the candidate's intended path to employment within Canada. So that about covers the major differences between the immigration statuses and completes the walkthrough of the candidate registration. At this point, you're likely wondering, how does the tool work? So we can return to the PowerPoint and I'll explain that now. The Immigrant Employment Council of BC has been operating since 2008. And during that time, we championed a number of innovative solutions for employers, and as a result, we've built up an excellent working rapport with many BC employers. We're building upon these relationships to bring BC JobConnect to employers as an answer to their hiring problems. Employers register their profile with BC JobConnect and have their information checked to ensure that they are a legitimate employer within BC. Once this information has been verified, they're approved within the system and are provided with login details and access to the database of job-seeking candidates. From there, it works through a search bar just like any other easy-to-use internet searching tool. Employers type in what occupations they're seeking to fill by either using our occupation drop-down tools, matching with what we've provided candidates, or through typing in keywords. Once a keyword such as construction or administration or so on matches with a candidate's work or education experience, the candidate will then populate in an employer search results. If if an employer then views the candidate's profile and would like to get in contact with them, they would submit a contact details request. The contact details request will be submitted to IECBC, who will then contact the candidate to inform them of the employer's interest. Only when a candidate provides their permission will IECBC pass the client's contact details over to an employer, and from that point on, the relationship is in the employer and candidate's hands. IECBC will check in with the parties only to find out the result of the connection. So that takes me to the end of the walkthrough, and at this point I would like to open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Fanan. So there's been a lot of information relayed over a very short period of time, so we'd like to give you folks a minute or two to think of any questions you may have and to type those questions in, and we'd be happy to respond to the best of our ability. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. We have one or two here now. So one of the first questions that has been asked is, if an individual does not reside in BC, how can they register? Did you want to respond to that, Fanan?
If an individual doesn't reside in BC at the moment, they can always register online, and at that point they would just be asked to select pre-arrival immigration status, and yeah, it's pretty simple. Obviously, like I said, you just need a standard internet connection, and so you can do that from anywhere in the world. You would just obviously need to have satisfied the criteria and the eligibility criteria. So that would be, a client would need to have, the most important of which would be that they would need to have their permanent residence number. Yeah, so if an individual doesn't reside in BC, it's the same. It's just using the internet, really.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have a second question that's just come up too. Is BC JobConnect offered in any other languages? And the second part of the question is, what level of English do you suggest the clients would need? So in answer to the first part of the question, currently BC JobConnect is only offered in English. In terms of English levels, we have a wide range represented by the candidates currently registered, from essentially almost no English to a CLB 1, 2, 3, all the way up to CLB 9+. So what we've actually found, the contrary to what some folks may think, is that there are in fact some employers who actually are quite willing to look at individuals with lower language levels and to look at accommodating candidates' English language training classes. So again, we would encourage you to register candidates at all English levels, and I'll give an example of, in terms of employer accommodation, there's a few employers that we know directly that have actually adjusted the individual's work schedules to allow he or she to attend language training classes. So in a nutshell, we have all levels from, as I said, almost no proficiency all the way to CLB 9, 10, and 11.
There's another question that has come in, and are refugee claimants eligible for the program? Unfortunately, refugee claimants aren't eligible until they receive that permanent residence number, which I believe most refugee claimants don't have in the beginning stages of their arrival. So once they get that permanent residence number, then they are free to sign up to the TIL.
Okay, another question. Could you give us some sense of the breakdown percentage of employers by region?
Yeah, that's a great question. They have been mostly within the Lower Mainland. The vast majority, well, sorry, not the vast majority, the majority of employers that have registered would be in the Surrey area, Abbotsford, somewhere in Chilliwack. Vancouver has obviously, there's huge registrations from there, and we're starting to see more registrations now from employers on Vancouver Island, and obviously with the expansion of the tool, we think that we'll be able to serve them more effectively than we have been able to do so in the past.
I think just to add to what Fernanda said too, just in terms of demand, we actually are seeing quite a few employers in the Fraser Valley areas, so Abbotsford, Chilliwack areas, and there actually are not enough clients registered from those areas because, as we know, transportation can be an issue for any individual. So again, we are really looking at encouraging registration from all municipalities and Fraser Valley. Do you have promotional materials which can be distributed to Work BC centers? Yes, we do. Previously we had an employer-facing rack card, which obviously was for employers who would be interested in registering JobConnect. We had a client-facing rack card. With the changes now from BC Refugees JobConnect to BC JobConnect, those collaterals are being updated, so we would be happy to send those out electronically to any individuals who would like them. So if you would, rather than inundating the 80 folks that are online now, if you would like to have those collaterals, could you please send us an email? We'll provide you with that address at the end of the presentation, and we'll be happy to get those out to you. Also to note too, there's information on our website around BC JobConnect as well. So again, happy to send you information electronically and or provide you with some hard copies.
So I did mention during my walkthrough that if your centre has not been, it's not in our drop-down box for how you heard about us, that would be in the candidate registration, to send me an email. My email is fionn.griffin@iecbc.ca. That's FIONAN.GRIFFIN@iecbc.ca. And if that name is a bit confusing or difficult to spell, you could just email bcjobconnect@iecbc.ca.
So another question's coming about how about the percentage breakdown by industry? We do have those analytics, again, which we can provide to all participants by email. We don't actually have the numbers in front of us, but what I can tell you that we have the main industries we have ranging from manufacturing, so industry/sectors, excuse me. So manufacturing, food services, retail, construction, professional services, and by professional services I mean companies such as Ernst & Young and KPMG, as well as finance and accounting, and also companies that do general labor and horticulture.
So the acronyms for the English language requirements, someone's just asked a question about. So CLB is Canadian Language Benchmark, and that would be the standards, standard English assessment test that's given by the Government of Canada. Then there's IELTS, which, to be honest, I'm actually not sure of the acronym for that off the top of my head. TEFL, Teaching English as a Foreign Language, and then CELPIP. They're all the most recognised, they'd be the most recognised, widely recognised in Canada, English assessment tests.
Next question is, Vancouver Public Library on the drop-down list of service providers.
You have to go into that drop-down list, and you can take it, like I said, just register as an employer or a candidate, and you would be able to get access to that.
No, I think, sorry, Fernand, I think the question is they currently on the drop-down list of service providers? So as Fernand mentioned earlier, please take a look at that list. If your organization is not listed there, send Fernand an email, and we'll add your organization to the drop-down list of service providers. So we're going to take a few more minutes, see if there's any other questions. Let's see, where's going here? Oh, we have another question here. So if a client landed more than 5 years ago, but has not lived in Canada for the past 3 years, are they still eligible? So we will confirm that with IRCC, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, but our understanding is this is eligible to individuals who have actually lived/resided in Canada for less than 5 years. So we have another question. How do you handle recognizing credentials for refugees? So I'm assuming, so if the person who posed that question, if I'm not answering your question, could you please ask another question to help me clarify my response? So I'm assuming you are referring to refugees who may not have their certificates and or documentation to verify their credentials, which, as we know, would not be unusual given the situations in which refugees are fleeing from and arriving in Canada. So as Fernand mentioned, under the profile for refugees, we've intentionally provided optional questions and fields that will allow a refugee to articulate their experience, credentials, in a way that doesn't require them to provide documentation. So we understand that many refugees don't have the documentation, so the fields, if you take a look at the fields, you'll see that some of the questions have been intentionally framed to allow refugees who may not have the verification documentation to still showcase and highlight their background, skills, and experience, and, if applicable, credentials. So, person who posed that question, thank you, and if that doesn't answer your question, please, if you could clarify specifically what you're looking for. The next question, how many Penticton employers do you have registered? Fernand, can you answer that offline? If not, we can provide that by email.
I can't provide that information by email. Off the top of my head, I think we have 2 employers within Penticton that are registered. But again, who's ever asked that question, just email me directly and I can get that information to you after the webinar.
So next question, is a client restricted to one industry or sector choice? Absolutely not. So again, just to reframe that, so when a client registers his or her profile on the site, employers from a range of industries or sectors enter key search words, candidates' profiles that meet some of those search words would come up, and then the employer would request connections with the candidate/client. So absolutely, there's no restrictions on the part of a client, because as we know, obviously positions can be transferable among industries or sectors.
And I should mention there as well that it's like it's an online, the resume that you build within JobConnect can be changed as you go along. As you update your skills or your abilities, you're free to change your industry or sector if you've gained some experience throughout that time. And we would ask clients that have registered to continually update their profiles.
The next question is the age of the client visible to employer? I noticed that there was a portion that has date of birth.
So no, that's not. It's actually something that I should have covered in my walkthrough. When you are registering a client, you can see that there are there's I symbols. The first time a client registers within the tool, they are actually given a tutorial, which does outline some of the symbols that you'd see on the page. So many of those fields that you would have seen on the profile page are actually not visible to an employer. So anything that an employer could potentially be used to discriminate against a client has been hidden from an employer. They're only for reporting purposes only, for our own information, just so we can get a better idea of our, I guess, demographics, but they're absolutely not viewable to employers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So there's a next question. Is there a special program for clients with disabilities? No, at this time, BC JobConnect doesn't have any special accommodations for individuals with disabilities. Our mandate is first and foremost on refugees and immigrants, but certainly that's something we can explore. Again, if the person who posed that question would like to elaborate, please send an email to Fernand and we'd be happy to respond to you directly. The next question is there help available from a WorkBC case worker filling out the form? Well, I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of all the WorkBC centres, but we can tell you from direct experience, as we do work with many WorkBC centres, that in fact the caseworkers / job developers are instrumental in assisting their clients to complete the form. But I will note that the profile is quite relatively simple to complete, so it really would be individuals who maybe don't have lower English skills that may require some assistance from WorkBC and or another employment service provider. So we just have, oh, sorry, I'm just reading this.
There's another question that has come in. How do we screen employers that are registered with BC JobConnect? So again, we do, like from ICBC's point of view, we will do whatever we can to find out that an employer is a legitimate employer within BC. So that would involve doing research on each employer that registers through the use of online tools. And then with any employer that does make a request for any candidate information, there will always be a phone interview with that client, again, to do our homework. But there's only so much homework that ICBC can do. At a certain point, a candidate within the tool and an employer within the tool will both need a certain element of caution using it, the same element of caution that would go with using any online tool.
So we have another point and question. So the website is too complicated for low English users. How do you propose immigrants to use it? So we absolutely acknowledge that for individuals with lower English levels that the website may be difficult for them to navigate, and this is why we are promoting BC JobConnect and Work BC centers and other immigrant serving organizations and organizations that provide any kind of employment programs for immigrants, because what we have found is that the job developer or the caseworker or the settlement worker will often need to provide some assistance to the potential candidate to assist he or she to register on the site. So our work is not done in isolation. We very much work in partnership with a range of service provider organizations, immigrant serving organizations, as I said, and Work BC centers. And this is part of the reason why we're doing this webinar today, is to provide you, as individuals who may be working with refugees and immigrants looking for employment, to provide you with information so that you can assist your clients to register on BC JobConnect. So the next question is, what is the strategy for promoting this information to employers to encourage them to register? So we have a multi-pronged strategy. We have a range, including we offer webinars for employers. In fact, our next one is scheduled for August 31st. So our digital strategies include webinars, obviously our website, partnership with other organizations, so hyperlinks. We also have print and digital collaterals. And on our team, we have an employer relations manager whose role is to essentially reach out to employers, identify how we can help them to better connect to the immigrant talent pool in BC, and to inform them of programs and initiatives such as BC JobConnect and the FAST program, which the Prearrival program, which I referred to earlier. So I'm sure folks wouldn't mind if we actually ended earlier, but I just want to make sure that people have had an opportunity to really reflect on the information and answer any questions that may immediately come to mind. So I'll give us another minute to see if there's any other questions, and then we'll wrap up and send you off to your busy days. Another question has come up. Thank you. What are the occupations that employers are mostly seeking to hire?
I can jump in here. So as of late, we've received a lot of requests for clients within the landscaping industry, be that through the growing industries such as tree growing, tree propagation out in the Abbotsford and Chilliwack areas, and again over in Vancouver Island. We've received, so there's been a huge increase for that. I guess that would have a lot to do with the seasonal work that would take place in that area. But then, as Daisy spoke of earlier on, we have had a lot of requests from professional-based companies, large multinational companies, looking for more kind of office administration work. We've had requests from finance and insurance companies looking for call center work. There's been a wide range. We've had people employed in project management positions with, for engineering companies. There has been a wide range, but as of late, just to give you an idea, yeah, there's been a huge increase in the tree propagation and seeding and landscaping industry. And for any clients, I guess, in the skilled labour or construction labour, there's always positions going in that industry.
Just to build on what Fernanda said, though, I think though the type of employers that are registered currently on BC JobConnect are to a large degree a result of how we promoted the tool. As I mentioned, when we launched in late 2016, it was really a direct response to the arrival of Syrian refugees in BC, and also direct response to requests that we've had over the years from employers to provide an easy way to directly connect to talent. So because we recognize that although certainly many refugees do have higher language levels and skills, the majority arriving in BC at that time would be lower skilled and lower English levels. So the type of employers that we were targeting were employers that were had a range of positions from lower skilled to higher skilled, and that would also be willing to accommodate lower English language levels. Now that we've launched BC JobConnect for all newcomers, and since we launched on the afternoon of the 21st, we've had over 15 quote-unquote skilled immigrants register. We are now going to be actively promoting this to employers that may have higher level positions that require higher English language skills. But just to add to finance too, we've had, as I said, people have been hired in manufacturing, construction, food services, professional consulting services, finance. So we really have seen a wide range of industries, sectors, and also levels of positions. So next question, will the answers to the questions be sent by email after the presentation? Well, actually, that's a good question. Fernanda and I hadn't thought about that. What we had agreed to is to respond to any questions by email following the webinar if we were unable to address them within this session. But if there's an interest in the answers to the posed questions, we'll certainly do our best. And Fernanda just let me know that yes, he will send the answers to all of the questions that have been posed today to all of you who've registered for this webinar. Okay, and the last question, where can we see the recording of this webinar? So this webinar has been recorded and it will be located on our website. However, following the webinar, all registered participants will receive the link to the recording. And yes, we would absolutely welcome you and appreciate you sharing this. We want to get this out as widely as possible to both employers and candidates who are looking for employment. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, I'm just going to wrap up. So just again to reiterate, we've given you a very quick overview of the talent portal. If you would like to schedule a session on BC JobConnect for you and or your team members, or you'd like more information on how to use BC JobConnect, please contact Fanan. Again, his email address is finan.griffin@iecbc.ca. And again, our webinar will be recorded and available on our website, which is iecbc.ca. Our website address is also listed on the presentation. I just want to also add too that in addition to this webinar, our website also has other resources that you may find useful, including onboarding toolkits, tip sheets, and information about other promising practices from employers. So while you're there, if the information seems useful for you, you're welcome to sign up for our e-newsletter to receive information about our programs, resources, and other events. And we promise not to inundate you with email. So on behalf of the Immigrant Employment Council, again, we'd like to extend our sincere thanks to Christy McGee for providing opening remarks and being with us today, and more importantly for identifying this opportunity and promoting it to all of you. We'd like to thank you for joining us. We hope that this webinar has been useful. We recognize that everyone has very busy schedules. Again, I encourage you, if you have any questions that we have not answered or something comes up at some point, please do not hesitate to contact my colleague, Fanan Griffin. And we thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.